Mr. Dhanuka and Mr. Bhuvania, they started Millennium Mams 28 years ago to give financial independence to women by investing in capital markets. I salute their resilience for holding their ground and touching the lives of more than 4,000 women in these 28 years.
Very good.
And this is for my friends who have joined me today for the session. Have you heard of hashtag Clear Resilience Challenge? Well, it's a 14-day challenge promoted by a well-known multinational, and it aims at helping young employees build resilience during this COVID-19 pandemic. Why are we talking about it today? Because Clear is a brand which belongs to Unilever, and of course, no prizes for guessing our guest of honor today. Leena Nair, the first female, the first Asian, and youngest ever Chief Human Resource Officer of Unilever. What's even more inspiring is the fact that Leena completed the challenge herself, went the whole 9 yards, and now that's the best example of practice what you preach. She offers a ray of hope, maybe because she uses sunlight. She wears many hats, and recently she wore a cycling helmet while cycling to work with the UK and Ireland team, putting the pedal to the metal. Shall we say, Leena? She certainly takes good care of herself. Is she radiant because of Dove or Lux, or is it her DNA? Does she stay in shape with Knorr soups, or does her fresh salad have Knorr mayonnaise? Her LinkedIn caption reads, Unilever CHRO, Catalyst for Change, Proud Mother. We would like to add global inspiration. Her mission statement, my purpose is to ignite the human spark to build better business and a better world. We couldn't agree more. Does the fresh perspective come from her morning cuppa, Lipton, or maybe Brook Bond? Multiple cultures, multiple psychologies, and of course, multiple roles. She handles this tough balancing act with aplomb. She wants to build an inclusive environment so that everyone, regardless of their background, can contribute. 3 decades and still yearning for excellence. Can we define commitment any better? Bridging the gap between employer and employee expectations in rapidly fluctuating global ecosystem cannot be a walk in the park. Let us all, with a big round of applause, welcome Miss Leena Nair, youngest ever Chief Human Resource Officer of Unilever and member of the Unilever Leadership Executive. Leena, you have so many questions to answer today. You have inspired millions of women like me through your leadership style and well-crafted decisions. I would like to invite you to start the session today for us. Leena, over to you.
Thank you so much, Rachna. It is so, so kind of you. I loved it that you use so many Unilever brands. I hope everyone's using them. I hope they're making a difference to your life.
Absolutely.
So just a little bit about me. I grew up in Kolhapur, which when I used to study at XLRI, people used to think was in Rajasthan because Kolhapuri chappals are so famous. So I grew up in Kolhapur. I grew up, not knowing I'd have a chance to do anything like what I'm doing today. I did electronics and telecommunications engineering. Because I liked maths, no other reason. And I worked as an engineer, didn't enjoy it that much, and then went to do my MBA in human resources and started my career in Hindustan Viva 28 years ago. So it's been a long time. And all my career, I have had the privilege and the burden of being the first woman at everything. You know, the first woman who went to a night shift, first woman who ran industrial relations, first woman who went to sales, and so on and so forth. And it's been an honor of my life for sure to have the privilege to trailblaze, to have the privilege to make it easier for others who come after me. But it's also been a burden because it's been a burden of constantly knowing that what you do is seen by others. You're being watched more than others. You're being judged. All of women are being judged by the actions you take. So that's been a little bit of my story. Like you said, I'm married. I'm married to Kumar, who runs his own financial services company in India. I have two gorgeous boys. Please discount mother's pride. They're 22 and 18 now, so two grown-up boys. And one of my hobbies and interests is dancing. I constantly say in all my speeches that I'm the best Bollywood dancer in Unilever.
Yes.
And people say, how do you know? I say it's self-certification. If you want to challenge me, please come and do it. So that's just a little bit about me to give you a sense of who I am. I'm going to spend about 10 minutes giving you a little bit of perspective of life with COVID. And I'm going to talk about three things. One is, how is it impacting the global economy and what should we think about? The second is, how is it impacting consumers? What are the trends we are seeing? Because I work for a consumer products company.
Yeah.
And last but not the least, a subject of passion. How is it going to impact employees and the way they think? So I'll try and do this in 10 minutes, so I leave plenty of time for the questions. And like I said, Rachna, I'd love all questions. Namita, all questions are welcome, personal, professional, anything. Yeah.
Wow.
So I really, really enjoy interacting and having, whatever's on your mind answered. I want to be of service to you. I want to answer what's on your mind.
Absolutely.
So COVID, it's come out of nowhere. It's turned our lives upside down. It's the most unprecedented, bizarre thing that's happened in our lives, certainly in the last 100 years, and who knows before then. So when I look at the economy, and I've had the privilege of interacting with the world's best economists across the globe, and I can tell you, nobody has a singular point of view. Nobody really knows how long the recovery is going to take. The bets are on from a V-shaped recovery to a U-shaped recovery, to a L-shaped recovery, where recovery could take as long as 2022, 2023. So we are looking to a period of low consumer confidence, low consumer spending, lots of travel restrictions, and generally an impact on the stock market and an impact on commodity trading, FX. So the entirety of all the economic structural problems will ensure that it is going to take longer than we think to really come back to some sort of life with COVID normalcy. So it's really important to keep in mind that as we go into the new normal, lives will be important, protecting my life, protecting my health, but livelihoods will become equally important. Do I have a job? Can I put food on the table? Can I look after my family? And the other thing that will happen is, and because I look at this globally, every country has had a different impact. Every country, the government has had a different response. Every country has been at different stages of discovery, denial, and every country is finding a different strategy of recovery rehabilitation, which means the economic impact will be vastly different. And it will really depend on how quickly a vaccine is found, how quickly some of the structural economic solutions, and how quickly we can hope for people to feel safer and to feel like there is some drug that can take care of them if they were to fall ill. So I think the broad thing about the economic impact is that nobody really knows, but businesses, companies, countries should plan for a range of outcomes that vary from recovery in the next 2 or 3 quarters to recovery in the next 2 or 3 years. So let me then shift gears to what's going to happen with consumers. Yeah. We are seeing lots of trends in consumers. Some of them will stick, some of them will not. So I'm going to talk about 4 trends. We're seeing a lot of cocooning, people, families staying together in quarantine. Yeah. Cocooning is the time for self-care, self-reflection in many cases, but cocooning is also the time when, when social and economic barriers no longer exist. What I mean is it's all leveled out. Cocooning is also the time, whether you're rich or poor, everybody leaning in to do household chores together. Yeah? Cocooning is the time for finding the space and time sometimes to learn new things. But cocooning also leads to confined spaces, and you see bullying within family members go up. So cocooning has lots of positives, but also negatives that we have to watch for. The second trend for consumers that I want to touch upon is everything. Everything has gone online, from shopping to virtual yoga to laughter yoga sessions to Zoom parties to graduation ceremonies to talking to all of you. It's become virtual. I was hearing about the cloud clubbing that's now going on in full swing. So the world has become everything, which also means that if you are not digitally savvy, if you don't have the infrastructure to be connected digitally, then you'll be very isolated and lonely. So everything is a great trend as well in some matters. I remember when SARS happened and China thought that people are doing e-shopping only because of SARS, and after that it's all going to stop. That didn't happen. It became a permanent trend. People continued shopping online for everything. And that China has always been way ahead of the rest of the world on everything. Mm-hmm. So the second trend to keep in mind is consumers are doing everything online. The third trend I want to speak about is clean living. People will be drawn to antiviral, antibacteria, antiseptic, anti-dirt, more vegan, vegetarian. People will start looking at how can I live in a more clean way that protects me and my family from this virus. So we'll see products, services that cater to this growing much faster. And last but not the least, protective measures. Consumers will take protective measures. Masks are already becoming a way of life. Gloves, protective shields, face shields, taking immunity boosting products, from turmeric to ginger to, everything that talks about immunity. We find that attractive. It is about well-being. The Clear Resilience Challenge. You want to be resilient. You want to be strong. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Super. So do shout out, Rachna, if anytime you can't hear me clearly. I'll be happy to repeat. So protective measures, keeping ourselves safe, keeping our immunity in full stead, which are called protective measures, will become a norm. So these are 3 or 4 of the trends we must keep in mind. Cocooning, everything, clean living, protective measures. I've just chosen a few to highlight. And now coming to employees. What's changing for employees? A lot has changed for employees. Who would have thought the whole world will learn to work out of home if you're not in manufacturing or sales? So let me again talk of 3 or 4 trends that I see. Number one, the distributed workforce. Yeah, the cottages are coming back. People will no longer across the world go to office for all 5 days a week or all 6 days a week. The offices will not have capacity once you put social distancing measures into place and you put flexiglass, you put tables which are 2 meters apart. And secondly, people will wonder why they need to come to work every single day unless they're doing some essential work that needs the office. So we'll begin to move to a world that's very fluid, where people will go to office, but only once or twice a week, and will learn to work out of home 2 to 3 days a week. They will learn to work very, very differently. That's why I call it the distributed office. People like us, multinational like us, that have thousands of offices across the world, we are thinking, what should be our footprint of the future? Should we have 30% less offices? And that's the same thing everybody needs to think about. Do we need all the office space that we have? Can we think about it differently? The second trend is lifelong learning comes of age. One of the things that's happened in COVID is fantastic content is now online. Lots of experts are talking about lots of subjects. Everything is being recorded and is available online. The best leadership experts, the best virologists, the best, political leaders of our time. the best teachers in school. All the material is now available online. So lifelong learning is truly come of age. People are learning how to consume. In our own company, I see it's gone up by 300%. People are consuming so much material, how to be well, how to work out of home effectively, how to support your mental well-being. All of that is now online. And like I say, it's on steroids, it's on fire. Yeah. The third trend is about safe haven standout. Yeah. Companies, businesses, institutions that put people first, that say that protecting our people is important, that try and protect jobs, that try and protect salaries will stand out. It's very easy to say business is going under and therefore I'll get rid of all my people. It takes far greater courage to say, oh my God, my business is struggling, but I'm going to find a way to protect the livelihoods of my people. And safe havens will stand out. Companies, businesses, institutions that put people at the heart of everything they're doing and protect their lives and livelihoods will stand out and will be more attractive for others to join, will be more respected when the times are better, will be more trusted for their brands and products when this time is over. And last but not the least is the fourth thing I want to talk about is the war for employment. Yeah, the immobile workforce. We've always spoken about the war for talent. People quit all the time. Talented people quit even faster. So we are going to see more of war for employment because people are not going to jump ship at such a time. Yeah, they are worried about jobs. People are not recruiting as much. The recruitment services are down. So all in all, we are going to see the war for talent shift to far more the war for employment. Where are the jobs when all the graduates, who do their graduation ceremony online because they can no longer go to their campuses? Where are the jobs for all of them? I was looking at data for the UK, which showed that COVID times are impacting the youth, those between 18 to 24 years, far, far more in terms of economic terms. But when people are furloughed, when people's jobs are lost, it's normally the newest entrants of the company that lose their job the first. So it's having a disproportionate impact on younger people. So we really have to think about how we're going to support the young, how we're going to support this war for employment. So 4 things for employees that I've spoken about today. One is the distributed workforce, some physical, some virtual, a new combination of office working and home working, a new office footprint for every company. The second is lifelong learning. Now you have no excuses. Every content you want is available on video, on podcasts, books, whatever you want. Lifelong learning has truly come of age and we've all learned to do it digitally. The seminar, this wouldn't have happened if I was coming in person because I wouldn't have found time in my diary to fly to Calcutta or to wherever all of you are to talk to you. But this gives me an absolute delightful opportunity to talk to all of you. The third that I spoke about is the safe haven standing out, responsible companies, responsible businesses, responsible institutions that put people first. And last but not the least, the war for employment rather than the war for talent. So I just wanted to use 10 minutes to frame these 3 things: the economy, the consumer changes, the employee changes. And now I want to end with 3 overall messages to all of us before I open it up for questions. The first is, we are all in the same storm, but we are all not in the same boat. Yeah? Don't assume everyone is in the same boat. People have different challenges. Businesses have different challenges. If you're an airline business today, you're far more impacted than if you are in a retail business, and so on and so forth. So we are all in the same storm. We're not in the same boat. So please be kind to others. We don't know what they're struggling with. So leaders need kindness. Politicians need kindness. We need kindness towards each other. We're not in the same boat. People have different challenges. Some have young kids, some have caregiving responsibilities, some have family members who are immunocompromised, some have vulnerable people in their neighborhood. We're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. Don't make assumptions. Be kind. The second thing is that businesses must protect lives and livelihoods. They must protect, they must continue to think about business continuity. How do we ensure business comes back to normal? Because the best way to take care of people is if business grows. If we can ensure companies grow. If that happens, we can take care of jobs and people for longer. So business leaders and political leaders must see how to support businesses to grow. Businesses, entrepreneurs, we need all of them to grow right now. And last but not the least, we all have to think about how we are future proofing our business. Future proofing our business is about constantly looking at the trends that I've spoken to you about and such trends, and thinking about what are the impact of those trends on my business. As a leader, as an entrepreneur, what are the impacts of those? How can I be ready for the world, which is the future normal world, which is a world that we're all going to live with COVID for a foreseeable future? How are we going to get ready for that world? And my absolute last message to you is, all said and done, these few weeks, days, months are giving us some huge lessons. Lessons as leaders, lessons as people. Yeah, I joke about it that you can get 30 years of leadership development in 100 days. That's what I feel like. I have learned, grown enormously in this last 100 days. And so have each of you. So please use this time as a time for growing your own personal leadership, your own personal qualities. Because when we come out of this in some shape or manner, we should be better people, better leaders. We should come out of this stronger than ever.
Wow. Thank you, Leena. Thank you for the invaluable insight and the messages you've given, these 4 messages. It'll be there with us throughout these challenging times, I'm sure. Thank you. And over to Namita for Q&A.
Wow, Leena. Rachna talked about you being her role model. You just added another fangirl.
Thank you, Namita.
So before, I open it up, I'd like to ask a question, please.
Go for it. You have the privilege to ask all the questions. They're all yours.
This is my question to the best dancer in HUL. The one who wants HR, who feels that HR needs more swagger.
Yes.
And who's already adding a lot of firsts wherever she's been and whatever she's done. So what is it that you do to actually keep pushing the envelope and being so creative?
Yes. Let me, when I finished electronics and telecommunications engineering, and I went and told my father that I wanted to do human resources in XLRI. It wasn't even called human resources. It was called personnel management. He was so disappointed. He said, why is a bright engineer like you who should be doing masters or something like that? Why are you going and doing personnel? Who cares about personnel? It's like a back office function. And I said, no, it's important for me. I want to do it. And I went to XLRI. I studied it. I loved it. And I've loved my career. And the function has exploded in the last 27 years as I have continued my career. People no longer ask, oh, what does HR do? They get it. Yeah, they've realized people are important. So I'm hugely passionate about making the world better for all human beings. Yeah, that's why my whole purpose is igniting the human spark. It annoys me that in the 21st century, in the balance sheet and P&L, people just feature as cost lines. They don't feature in anywhere else. It gets me mad that investors sometimes don't ask enough questions about what are you doing to look after your people? How are you investing in people? Well, the only thing that can make a difference to people is can make a difference to business is people. What else does a company have? It has lots of machinery, assets, it may have brands, but the biggest asset a company has is its people, innovative people. Now, how do I keep myself motivated, engaged, inspired? I do that by what I say, hashtag I learn every day. Every day when I start my day, I tell myself, today is the first day of my career and I'm hungry to learn. Who can I learn from? So huge degree of curiosity about everything, a huge degree of humility, saying that I'm a learner, I'm here to learn. I can learn new things. So that is what's kept me going, because today in my diary, I set 40% of my time to learn new things, to learn about what's happening in the world, to learn about trends, to listen to other people, to listen to podcasts, to reach out to my peers who are doing interesting work and say, hey, tell me what are you doing? Having a coffee with a young person saying, hey, you're working on something, help me understand this. How does the Instagram story work? Every day I find a moment to learn. Yeah. So being curious, being humble is what's helped me keep my motivation and drive. The day you feel you've arrived, it's the day you start going down, because the only way to go from there is down. Yeah. But every day I tell myself, oh my God, look how much there is to learn. The list of what I want to do and the list of what I want to learn is so much longer. I have a saying that says, and I borrowed it from a blind person, Miles Hilton Barber, who's also very inspiring. Ask yourself every day, when is the last time I did something for the first time?
Wow.
That was the last time you grew.
Wow, wonderful.
Amazing, amazing. 40% of your time you spend on something new. And this year you're learning Spanish, isn't it?
I'm learning Spanish. Hola, buenas noches. Yo hablo un poco de español.
No comprende español.
Which means I speak a little bit of Spanish.
And no comprende español.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Absolutely. I'd like to ask Meghna Bajoria with her question. She's ready.
Hi, Leena. Wonderful
Hi.
to hear such great insights from you, Leena. My question is, at Unilever, you have achieved a great gender balance, which is really commendable.
Yes.
So what interventions, according to you, has helped in improving this gender diversity?
Yes. Great question, Meghna. Let me tell you, because this is something I want to brag about. Unilever is 50-50 in its managerial ranks. We have 15,000 managers across the world, and we are 50%, 50% men, 50% women. And when we set the goal in 2010, and I was the inclusion champion at that time, we never thought it would be possible. We said 2020, 50-50, and we said it's 10 years away. Hopefully we'll make it. Who knows? But here we are today. So there are a couple of things. The first thing you need is leadership commitment. Yeah, you need leaders to say that they want to do it, they will do it. Yeah. The second thing you need is you need to make appointments. Yeah. So we have very simple systems. If our recruiters bring lists of candidates, it has to be balanced. 50% men, 50% women. Don't know how much trouble it's going to be, but bring us lists. So every time you make an appointment, you have to consider, have I considered as many women, as many men? If you're interviewing 2 men, we insist you interview 2 talented women and 2 talented men. The decision is always made on merit. The slates have to be balanced. The recruitment candidates have to be balanced. The interviews have to be balanced. The third thing that's helped is to bring the power of data. We do something very simple. We give every leader, the top 3,000 leaders in our company who appoint all the people in the company, a gender appointment ratio scorecard, which is very simple, which says in the last 5 years, you had the opportunity to make 100 appointments, so let's say 100, 200, 300 appointments, and on so many occasions, you appointed a woman. And your ideal gender appointment ratio is 1. You must appoint as many women as you appoint men. And those leaders who have very poor gender appointment ratios, we ask them, what happened? How come? You know, we're not passing any judgment, but can you please explain to us how you never had the opportunity to appoint any women? Can you just help explain in 5 years, not in 1 year? So we bring the power of data to everything we do. The fourth thing we do is really focus on culture. We're all biased. We all have assumptions of what women can do, cannot do. I was explaining the story of my life. You know, I started in a factory, and the first time I went to the factory, they never had a woman in that factory. So there was no loo for a woman. Yeah. Now, men don't realize that is the journey we all go through to reach senior positions. So I reached the factory and I said, okay, there's no loo. Now what do I do? So I started learning to share the men's loo. So I had to knock at the door and say, wait till all of them came out, then go in, use it, come out. Yeah. I can tell you so many loo stories, you know, because when you are the first woman, this is what you deal with, which a lot of men don't understand. So the assumptions and biases have to be challenged. In fact, when I was leaving HUL and coming to Unilever globally about 7-8 years ago, you know, the CEO in my farewell speech said that the capital expenditure went up everywhere, wherever Leena went, because they had to build a loo for her. So I said, why don't you name all the loos after me? Leena's Loos. I think it's a good brand. So I said, people have roads and memorials named after them. I have loos named after me. Yeah. But the point I'm making is you have to work on the culture, assumptions, biases. So we do huge amount of training called unstereotype. We've taken a commitment to get all our advertising rid of unstereotypes. Yeah. All advertising shouldn't just show the same things. You know, women in the kitchen, making food, washing the clothes, men in office, taking all the decisions. If you keep doing that, you will never break the assumptions and biases. So we started showing more and more role modeling in our advertising. And internally, we do the same thing. We celebrate everyone who breaks norms and stereotypes, like the father who takes paternity leave to look after his children for some time. So in summary, I would say you need to do things that support the numbers. You have to make appointments. If you don't appoint the women, and there are enough talented women out there, then you can't shift the needle. And you have to change the culture. And the culture changing is through lots of training, unconscious bias training, assumptions, challenging how we think about what women can do and can't do. And, you know, I speak about all this very personally. You know, where I grew up in a small town. Even my mother used to say, oh my God, Leena, you're so talented. I wish you were a boy. You're not going to get any opportunity to do anything. I mean, she's you know, she's beyond the moon to think that I got opportunities to do what I'm doing today. So so also encouraging the women is important. You know, that's why I'm so passionate about women and girls everywhere, because, you know, women and girls don't have the permission to dream big. If you don't dream, how can you make things happen? So it's a combination of all this that is supporting the women and changing the policies to support the men and women, focusing on the appointments and getting leaders to be committed and improving the appointments. And last but not the least, working on the culture. All of these things together has led to Unilever being gender balanced. Is that clear, Meghna?
Yes, absolutely, Leena. And hats off to you and Unilever. I really hope more companies follow this so that, you know, we can see women, the whole diversity changing towards women. Thank you so much,
We shall
Leena.
do it. We shall make it happen.
Leena, all I can say is may your tribe grow. I'd like to bring in Suman Agarwal with her question.
Yeah. Good morning, Leena.
Morning, Suman.
I was just awestruck listening to you, and all your words were shining the way you are right now.
Thank you.
So my question to you, Leena, is that what is Unilever doing to keep your employees motivated and engaged? And also your recommendations to small business owners to stay positive and productive.
Yes. So 2 questions. I'll take both of them. One is, you know, I believe that people make all the difference. Yeah. And Unilever is a company that has a purpose. We believe that our mission is to make sustainable living commonplace. We believe business should be a force for good. Business is not here just to make money. Business is here also to be a force for good. You can do well and you can do good at the same time. And we want to be the company that shows the world that you can do well and you can do good at the same time. So the way we keep people motivated, the first thing we do is we focus on purpose. Yeah. We are not the highest paying by any stretch. You can, you know, in our markets, you want to be higher paying, you can go to some of the banks, you can go to investment banking, you can do lots of things. You're not the highest paying. But we believe that people work for a deeper sense of purpose. So we put all 160,000 people through purpose workshops where they go through what are their crucible moments, what motivates them, what are they passionate about, what is the difference they want to make in the world, and they come out with their own purpose. Many people know it, it's just that they put words to it. Like my purpose is to ignite the human spark to build a better business and a better world. I want to do everything to help human beings to bring the best of themselves in everything they do. That's my purpose. So everyone goes through this, and that makes a huge difference to engagement. The second thing we do is we give people very stretched jobs, you know, big jobs with big responsibility, so that, you know, a young graduate will be the area sales manager in the first job of a 300 crore state. You know, big responsibility, big scale. We'll have a team of 100 people reporting to them. So what happens is when you're so stretched, your emotional intelligence grows, your intellectual capacity gets better. So we give people stretched, big, early responsibility. The third thing we do is we ensure they have access to learning. You know, we have a platform called Degreed where we have 2.3 million pieces of content and more. We encourage people to learn. They're learning weeks, learning days, learn with your leader, learn with Lena. There's like all the stuff to encourage people to learn. Because the more you learn, the more your perspective improves, the more your vision of the world improves, and the more you can make an impact in your job. And it also motivates and engages you, because when you feel you're learning, you feel engaged. When you feel you're learning, you feel you have control over your career, because you're learning new things, you have new skills. And last but not the least, we invest heavily in the well-being of our people. We have workshops that we call Thrive workshops, where people go to learn about mental, physical, emotional, purposeful. All four well-being is important. You have to focus on all four. If you're physically well, but you're not mentally well, you're not going to bring your best self to Unilever. So we invest in people's well-being. We believe that no employee should be more than one call, one chat, one click away from feeling well. So it's all of these things, focusing on their purpose, focusing on their well-being, giving them stretch jobs, and fulfilling jobs to do, and ensuring that they're learning all the time. It's all of these things that help people stay engaged and motivated in Unilever. I feel really proud because our pride scores are in the high 90s. And I keep telling my team, why in the high 90s? Who are those few people who are not yet proud in Unilever? It should be 100, So we're really, all these things have contributed to having a workforce that's proud. What is my advice to small business, small and medium-sized entrepreneurs? I belong to a family of entrepreneurs. Yeah. So all of my maiden family in Kolhapur is in business. My husband is an entrepreneur, and I see the struggles every day, the failures, the challenges, and I see some of them struggling in the COVID times. So my advice would be, first, be kind on yourself. Yeah, this is an incredibly difficult time. It's unprecedented. It's never happened before. The kind of recession and economic challenges we haven't seen for 100 years, may not have seen for 300 years in some countries. So first, be kind on yourself. Number two, think about how you can pivot your business. Yeah, you have to pivot your business. If you were doing stockbroking, you have to think how you can drive online harder. If you're doing whichever business you're doing, you have to think about the pivot. What can you pivot to? People still have needs in the world. People want products that will make them immune. People want products that will make them safe. People want disinfectants, sanitizers, masks, God knows what. There's a whole new need coming. How do you pivot your things to the new normal? Yeah. This is the time when agility is needed. You can't hang on to, this is how I always ran my business. Sorry, it's changed. For 100 years, we haven't seen this change. Please pivot. Please be agile. The third is take care of your people. Yeah? If you're going to wake up and lose all your people, you're going to lose all your capability. Yeah. So sometimes be honest with them. Say them, maybe I can't pay you salary for a couple of months. Maybe I will pay only 50% salary for the next couple of months. But let's be together. Let me take care of you and your livelihoods. And let's pivot this business to a new area that can work for us. Yeah. But be prepared to be kind on yourself, to really tighten the belt. Variabilize all your costs, the costs that are no longer needed. Travel, don't travel. No events, no conferences. Cut out all the waste in the business. But try and protect your people. Protect their jobs, if not their salaries. And look at how you can pivot the business to new areas of opportunity. Every crisis, there will be new areas of opportunity for sure. Yeah. See how you can tap on those new areas of opportunity.
Thank you so much. It was very nice advice.
Thank you,
Thank
Lena.
you.
Lena, I'd like to bring in one of our newest joinees into the Millennium Mams family. This is Sachi Singhania. Sachi, would you come in, please? She's from the first year batch.
Ah, nice.
Sachi, you there? No. Okay, so maybe I'll have to skip her. I'd like to bring in Srinidhi Bajoria. Srinidhi?
Yes. Hi, Lena.
Hi, Srinidhi.
So I was reading about the hashtags and you actually brought up that I love to learn. If I could request you to talk about the other hashtag that you spoke about, which is self-care. And incidentally, I'd like to share, our mentor, Mr. Dhanuka, has been taking self-development classes for us every single day during lockdown,
Yes.
to encourage us to also be on the same path. So if you could share with us how you're going about the same thing.
Yeah, I'll talk about hashtag self-care. I really believe that as particularly women, we put everybody else first. Yeah, we first take care of our kids, our families, our in-laws, our parents, our sisters, our brothers, and we put ourselves last. Yeah, I remember seeing so much consumer research all through Unilever, and it's true of women in most countries. In all countries, I would say the degrees vary, but it's true of kind of women everywhere, that they put themselves last. So when we used to say, when do you apply skincare? Some of the women in the interview would say, what skincare? I barely have time to sort of roll into bed after I've washed the last dish after dinner. What are you talking about? I have no time for myself. So I really believe that if you don't put the oxygen mask for yourself first, you can't look after anybody else. Yeah, because just as in an airline, nobody tells you, please put the oxygen mask for everyone else. And when you're gasping for breath, please put it for yourself. Nobody says that. They say, first put it for yourself, breathe deeply, and then put the oxygen mask for others and take care of others. So I think it's so important. So physical well-being, when I was at Excel and I finished Excel, I was fat. I was about, you can't see me now, but now I'm slim. But I was about, 30, 40 pounds fatter than you see me now. So I lost weight between my engagement and marriage because I wanted to look good for my wedding. Doesn't matter what the motivation. Once I lost weight, I decided I want to keep it. So no matter what the week is, I managed to make sure I have a trainer who trains me 3 times a week. Now we do it virtually. When I was in India, when I'm in London, I always have a physical trainer who focuses on ensuring my health is okay. I always make sure I take care of my nutrition and sleep. Sleep is like a drug for me. If I sleep well, I'm fresh, vibrant, and good. So I make sure I sleep. So this is about finding the time. The time is not an excuse. I have no time in my life. Yeah, I am so busy. We work in 190 countries. Sometimes during COVID, my day starts at 7, finishes at 12, and there's still people waiting to talk to me, and it's never over. So you have to carve the time for yourself. You have to say between 7 to 9 in the night, I'm not available because I'm cooking dinner for my family and I'm going to eat with my family. So you have to set boundaries, create space for physical well-being and emotional well-being. Emotional well-being comes from things that give you joy. Follow your passion. So many of us say, oh, I wish I had learned the guitar. I wish I had done this. It's never too late. What is late? My 79-year-old father was learning computers. He was going to a class with other 20-year-olds. And I keep telling him, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. See, Dad, you're an example. So there's nothing called too old. Don't put off the things you love. I love art. Okay, then paint, do something. Don't find excuses to not do the things you love. Because when you do the things you love, for me, it's Spanish, learning music, doing my Bollywood thumkas, whatever it is, make sure you do it because that will give you emotional well-being. And last but not the least, find your purpose. Discover what you want to do with your life. It doesn't have to be magnificent, that I'm going to change the whole world. It can be simple, but find it. Because when you find it, you find you get energy to do the things you care about. Something that you love. I mean, if you like motorcycle adventure, doesn't matter 12 o'clock in the night. If you see something interesting to read, you will read it. If you're crazy about dancing and you're watching TikTok videos, you can't stop. So find what you're purposeful and passionate about. Gardening, God knows what. Investments, God knows what. And in that, you will find your purpose and you will have endless energy. I don't think anybody in my team has ever seen me tired. Yeah, I think when they see me tired, they'll die of shock. They'll say, what? I've never seen her tired. Because when you look after yourself and you invest in your own physical well-being, mental well-being, emotional well-being, and you know your purpose, therefore your purposeful well-being, when all this comes together, you will feel good, you will have the energy, and then you can help and support others. You can support all the women and men in the world to be better versions of themselves.
Thank you, Leena. Listening to you only makes me feel good.
Our mentor, Mr. Dhanuka, talks about portfolio of life, Leena, and this is what he says. You should have a rich portfolio, and
Yes.
we're all looking at building that. So all your words are adding to our conviction as well. We have this very dynamic and vibrant young lady all the way from Singapore who wants to ask you a question. Anushri, would you like to come in?
Yes, thank you, Namita. Very nice to speak to you, Leena. Hi.
Lovely speaking to you.
I have a question for you. I saw that you've done a lot of work around diversity and inclusion, and my question is around there. So I wanted to ask you, so I've seen that companies are doing a lot of work around, ensuring that their teams are diverse and there are people with different perspectives and opinions. So that's great. But I wanted to ask about a more subtle form of inclusion.
Yes.
Sometimes when we're in meetings or even say in a Millennium Mams forum where the classrooms, there would be people with different personality types. So you might have the extroverts who are comfortable in a room full of people to put up their hand and ask a question or speak out.
Yes.
But you also have a group of people who might be introverts. And while they may not be comfortable, they might actually have better or even as good ideas as the extroverts. So what would be your advice on how can someone who's running a meeting or running an event make sure that the introverts also feel included and their brilliant ideas are heard as well?
Yeah, great question, Anushri. I worry a lot about ensuring different personality types. And like you say, inclusion is sometimes very subtle. It's very, it's not obvious. Sometimes, your boss will be addressing a meeting and he will, not look at you and look at everybody else. It's very subtle and not sort of give you the platform to say, well. So there are two things here. If you're leaders, I have advice for both. If you are leading a meeting, one of the simplest thing I've done all my life, what I call every voice matters, is to turn around in the room and ask everyone, every single person, do you have something to say? Do you have something to add different? And if you say it's okay, I have nothing more to add, it's okay. But if you have, that gives you an opportunity to say something. So as leaders, I always encourage, if you're in meetings of 5, 10, 15, 20 people, make sure you're asking for everyone's contribution, especially the silent ones. And so that you don't want to put the silent ones on the spot, you open it up for everyone and you say, Anushri, do you have something to add? Meghna, do you have something to add? Suman, do you have something to add? And so on and so forth. And listen to every voice, because you must signal as a leader, every voice matters. Now, when as a leader, I sometimes have to talk to 10,000 people or 3,000 people, which in Unilever we have to do many times. We have your call where we talk to the whole company. We have your call in HR where I talk to all of HR. We have your call leaders where I talk to all the leaders. What we do is we use forums like Pigeonhole, which are Pigeonhole, Slido. These are anonymous platforms where everybody can put a question. Yeah. And you don't have to put your name, just put the question, comment, just tell us. Yeah. That's another safe way for people to open up. So whenever you're in a leadership position, always be thoughtful. How can I ensure every voice is heard? And use technology, anonymous forums, besides using live forums to make sure every voice is heard. Give them the opportunity. Some people like to reflect and send you ideas. So always say, if you have any thoughts after the meeting, please send me an email or please send me your reflections. They'll still be welcome. Because some people like to reflect, think about it, and then give you points. Now, if you are someone in the group, now this is something I have learned as a woman. Women take longer to open up and put up their hand and say, I have 3 things to say. It's just like that because of the social conditioning, because of how we've grown up, because of many things. So if you are one of those whose voice is not being heard, my advice to you would be, 1, make sure you are making your voice heard by either writing to the leader of the meeting later saying, I had these thoughts, but I couldn't say them in the meeting. So make sure your point and input is gotten, number 1. Number 2, develop your confidence to be able to say it in the moment. So prepare. I used to have a little notebook where every time I managed to raise my hand and say something that I was trying to say, I would give myself 1 point. And then if the point was particularly good one, I would put a little star saying it was a good point and it was a little star. I must have done it for 5-7 years before finally I had the confidence to speak like I'm speaking today. No prompts needed. I can speak endlessly. You can't get me to stop. But, I had to work on it. It was not natural. We're not grown to sit in a room full of very senior thought experts and then you have to say a, piece. And, for many of us, there is this little gorilla, I say the 800-pound gorilla that's sitting on our shoulder and saying you're not good enough. The point you're going to say is terrible. It's not going to sound intelligent. They're going to think you're dumb. There is this big gorilla who's telling us every day that we're not good. And you have to reduce that gorilla or put the gorilla in the cage and find the confidence to say the things that really matter to you. Because you have to have the courage. You have to find your voice, which many of us will find and have found. But you also have to have the courage to say it. You know, I thank God I worked on it, because today I get platforms like Davos where I'm sitting with other, you know, political leaders, big, you know, prime ministers, and I'm having to say my piece. Yeah. So thank God I worked with my little notebook and kept giving myself points if I had the courage to say good things or to say things. To say things, doesn't matter they're bad or good. At least I had the courage to speak what was on my mind. So build that muscle. If you're an introvert, it will stand you in good stead. Yeah. And it will happen, I promise you. But you have to focus on it and make it happen and change the leaders. Yeah. When I had the courage, I started giving feedback to leaders. You know, one of the leaders who was a mentor to me, and I really respect him even today. He always would say, oh, people work so hard and their wives support them. People have completed 15 years of service, and let's congratulate these 20 people who've completed 15 years of service, and their wives also supported them. Because I used to be the only woman in the audience for so many years. You know, I was the first woman on the board of Hindustan Lever. I was the first woman being general manager in Hindustan Lever, and so on and so forth. So one day I went up to him and I told him, you know, you keep saying the wives supporting, but that means people like my husband, who are such a huge source of support to me, don't get any credit. You never say anything like that. You should say spouses. You should say partners. You should be more inclusive in your language. And he heard me. He said, you're so right. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was talking like this. So you not only have to develop the courage to speak your mind. I promise you, you will develop the courage, and other introverts will develop the courage to speak to leaders and give them feedback. I normally say the world is divided into 3 kinds of people. 30% of the people are so backward in their thinking, you can never change them. Don't waste your time on them. They're never going to change. They're just going to stay in their old world and never move. 30% of the people are fantastic. They want to change. They want to make the world a better place. They understand inclusion. They want to give an equal world to their boys and girls. They want to treat their sons and daughters equally. So 30% of the world are fantastic. Put your energy behind them because they get it. They're going to make it better for you. And 30% of the leaders are on the fence. They will go wherever the wind is blowing. So put your maximum energy behind the 30% who really get it, the 1/3 of the world that really get it and want to make the world a better place. When they change, the ones on the fence will come with them. And the 1/3 who never change will never change. Don't waste your energy on them. They will say things and do things that you don't agree with, and you may not be able to change them.
Thank you. That was very practical advice. And also to share with my colleagues or friends who maybe may not have that courage to put their hands up in a forum. That is very practical. Thank you very much.
I absolutely second that, Leena. Very, very practical and something that we can all do. We need to put that gorilla back in its cage. And I wish we could all just spend that one day with you when you're interacting with your colleagues in person. I know you're a hugger by nature, and
Yes.
we would love to see you like that.
My standard strapline is I'm the second best hugger in the world after Michelle Obama. So people say, oh, Michelle Obama has never hugged me, so you must be the best. I say, yeah, I'm the best. Who knows? Who's our doom?
We'll take yours any day. So with Usha's words, I'm going to end and hand over back to Rachna.
Oh,
Leena,
Smita,
you're awesome.
All day talking to all of you. You all are such wonderful, bright, talented, capable.
Even we don't want this
I
session to
know.
end, Leena.
Oh, it's breaking my heart that I have to go to other things now. I'm so enjoying myself. And please, if there are any unanswered questions, I'll try and create a video or something and send it over to you so you can
Oh, wow.
share it. Because I feel like I want to answer every question. I told you, every voice matters. So every question matters to me. So I'd love to create a video or something and send it across to you.
That's so nice. So nice of you. Last question, Namita.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to bring in Sirisha for the last question.
Yes. Isha.
Hi, you're glowing, and I've been feasting on your words and what you're saying.
Thank you so much.
My question to you, ma'am, is that, okay, after all that you have said, I was just wondering that the last 100 days were completely different from normal. They were nowhere close to normal. The time has traveled. I mean, we all time traveled. Yeah. So I was just wondering, as an organization, do you engage in people, I mean, people who have already left your organization, perhaps retirees or somebody, to engage with the ones who are working now, so that, because there's some kind of exchange of experiences because of the time that they have seen to mitigate this kind of, riding this crisis?
It's a great question. We have forums for all our alumni. We love our alumni. I always say everybody who lives Unilever is a quality product of Hindustan Lever, is a quality product of Hindustan Unilever, because I really believe so many of the CEOs in India today come from Hindustan Unilever. So I really encourage, we have alumni forums, alumni platforms, they come to meet us. We have parties all over the country, all the time, all over the world of Unilever alumni, because they have so much to offer. Because of this crisis in many of our factories, for example, we invited some of the retirees to come back and run the machinery because we were having absenteeism of 20-30%. We wrote to our pensioners and we wrote to our retirees and saying, if you're healthy, you're feeling fine, do you want to come back and work in our factories? And so many of them did. In Latin America, for example, 20% people came back from retiring to come and help us. We have so many pensioners. We have forums where pensioners contribute to us. We have 80,000 pensioners in the UK alone of Unilever. So you are absolutely right. There's such a wealth of experience in people who have done great jobs and have so much more to contribute. So we have used this COVID time to accelerate that some more, and we must keep doing that. I feel you must learn aggressively and curiously from everyone, young, old, senior, junior, peers. There's so much to learn from everyone. So great question. It's the learning agility and the learning attitude that matters more than anything else.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Fantastic talking to all of you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leena.